My name is Goldberg. I'm the chair in Hillsborough. I just want to thank everyone for coming today. We have a full program that's going to start off with a bang and end with a bang during the whole course of the day. We're going to move ahead quickly here. So without further ado, what I'd like to do is introduce our Somerset County Chair, Peg Schaefer. Many of you know.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks for being such a great chair of Hillsborough. Let's give Mike a round of applause. This is a tremendous idea that you guys started last year, and I think it's wonderful to have an opportunity to bring the community out to celebrate Hillsborough, and in particular to celebrate the Hillsborough Democrats. But we are especially honored this morning to having a guest who epitomizes my dream for who should be the governor of this great state. From the time I first got involved in politics, if I could have picked a person who would be the one I wanted to vote for in the year 2013, if I was that prescient, it would have been a woman like the one you're going to meet in a second. She doesn't just talk tough, she is tough. She's going to be a perfect antidote to that bully in Drumthwacker. And we can't wait until we can actually introduce Governor Barbara Buono.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Good morning, everyone. It's a great day, Community Day. It's a great start to a great day, I'm sure. You know, I'm about to, when I leave here, I'm going to receive an award, the Shirley Chisholm Award. And the reason I bring that up is because when I was thinking about Shirley Chisholm, who is someone who I have looked up to since I was in college, I started reminding myself why I'm running for governor. And you know, when I first saw Shirley Chisholm, it was on television and I was in college, and I remember thinking, boy, this woman's special. And you know, she inspired me because she was had such courage to run for President of the United States, and I really looked up to her because she was a pioneer. But it wasn't just because she was the first woman to run for President of the United States, and it wasn't just because she was the first African-American woman in Congress, but Shirley Chisholm was special because she really cared about people. She cared about the poor and the disenfranchised, the minority population, women across the United States of America. And although I never met her, I remember thinking that, you know, at the time when, you know, she said that she was a champion of the people. That was what her slogan was, champion of the people. And even though I never met her, at the time there was turmoil across the ocean. The Vietnam War was going on, and there was racial discord at home, and my generation was at the height of cynicism. Somehow, she made me believe that politics could make a difference, you know? And so she had that spirit, and that is really what motivates me. That's what inspires me to run today. You know, even though it was 40 years ago, when I think of Shirley Chisholm, a woman of the people, someone who refused to accept the status quo, someone who ran on a platform of justice and fairness, not just for the few that were privileged, but for the many that were not. Then I remember why I'm running for governor of the state of New Jersey. And that may have been 40 years ago, but you know what? Right here and now, in 2013, right here in New Jersey, we need that same kind of spirit, don't we? And we may have to work twice as hard, but we're not going to allow the cynics to impede us, are we? Because I grew up in New Jersey. I grew up in a New Jersey that had opportunity for everyone. If you worked hard enough, my father was an immigrant. We grew up poor, but you know what? Even though they slept in this fold-out couch in the living room so my sisters and I could have a bedroom, they had hope and they had dreams, and they knew if they worked hard enough, because I had a good public education and I had a strong foundation, they knew that with that hard work and education that anything was possible. But today that spirit, that hope and that optimism in New Jersey is slipping away. And I just couldn't stand back and see that happen, because I was able to put myself through Montclair State after my father passed away because I had advantage of the social safety net. Plus, there was affordable tuition back then, but I also had the advantage of tuition assistance, of work study, of my father's veterans benefits, of his Social Security death benefits. And you know, if I didn't have that, and by the way, in-state tuition, I would not be standing here before you today. And when I graduated college, there was another recession, and I was actually on food stamps for a while, because I was on my own after my father died at 19. And the only way I was able to make it through Rutgers Law School was a National Defense Student Loan. Back then it had 0% interest, and I had a year grace period after I graduated. Today it's almost, 7%, 6.8, and it starts accruing the minute you get that check. Now, I am under no illusion that if I were born into those circumstances right now, that I wouldn't have the opportunities that I do. So when people ask me why I'm running, I say, how could I not run? Look at the shape our state is in. And I think as elected officials, one of our greatest responsibilities to make sure that the next generation has those opportunities. And so we look around at a state where we have the highest unemployment in over 30 years, one of the highest in the nation, higher than the states in our region. And then we look at a governor who had a chance to help people, to have a real economic plan that would create jobs and incentivize the economy, and he has failed miserably at that. You know, he had 3.5 years to give us his vision for the economy. I think the time is up, don't you think?
Yeah.
We have an unemployment rate, as I said, is so high, and people are struggling. Those who are, and that doesn't even count the underemployed, those with part-time jobs. And so we have an opportunity. This governor could have signed a minimum wage bill that increased the minimum wage, not even a living wage really, but increased the minimum wage and tied it to the cost of living. He had a chance to restore the cuts he made to the earned income tax credit, which helps the working poor, and he said no. Shame on him. You know, so we are at a time in the state of New Jersey, it is a pivotal time. And so when I look around and I see this governor who's out of step on social values in New Jersey, who refused tens of millions of federal dollars for women's health just to cater to the Republican right. When I see a governor who's refused to let our brothers and sisters marry simply because they share the same gender, then I know that we have work to do in this state. And so when people ask me why I'm running against this governor, I tell them I'm not running against anyone. I'm running for New Jersey. I'm running for all the people who are unemployed and underemployed, who are tired of hearing that New Jersey comeback, which, by the way, you notice the governor changed his slogan recently. Now it's the middle class reform. And I said, for somebody who vetoed the minimum wage, cut the earned income tax credit, cut health care funding for women of modest means, middle class reform, well, that slogan has about as much credibility as the New Jersey comeback, right? So I tell them I'm running for all of the students who can't afford to live up to their full potential because the cost of higher education is soared. I tell them I'm running for all of the working poor and the middle class who can't, even though they have multiple jobs, still can't afford to put food on the table and provide for their families. And I tell them I'm running for all the people up and down this state who, because of where they live, how much they earn, have been told by this governor that you got to wait your turn. That it's not your time. Well, you know what? It is our turn. This is our time. And I promise you this, if you stand with me, and I know you will, and you believe in a New Jersey where equality of opportunity is a right and not a privilege, a right reserved for everyone, then we will win this November and begin to restore hope and opportunity in New Jersey.
So now you understand why it was so easy Somerset County to jump on the bandwagon of this young lady. Somerset County has been with Barbara, will be with Barbara, and will help her bring victory home in November.
It occurred to me that that I didn't talk about one thing, because I think I'm one of the 92% of. Oh, yes, yes, yes. You see this? And you know what? I'm also running for those, the 92%. Yes, I am. Yeah, this governor has he created a study commission, right? He came out with his recommendations, which fall far short. And you're gonna hear from us on that. But I also want to say one other thing, because the one thing that you will encounter when you run into people who aren't as politically involved as you are, is they'll point to the poll, and they'll say, well, there's such a big gap between the two of them, which, by the way, it's closing without me really doing anything. Well, I shouldn't say I'm doing nothing, and I'm working very hard. But when I say I'm nothing paid, not up on TV yet, or no mailings, but it's closing already. 12 points last week, 14 points this week, and so it will close. And you know why? You know why it'll close? Because we still have the highest property taxes in the nation. We have the unemployment, which was just unacceptable. And the people of New Jersey are smart. We're savvy. And you know what this governor said? If I had his record on jobs and the economy, if I had his record on the cost of higher education and property taxes, I'd want to just talk about Sandy too, right? I mean, the fact is, you know, Sandy is a priority. We certainly do need to rebuild in its aftermath, and we need to rebuild smart. But it hasn't erased the blackboard of all of the issues and all of the problems that have faced New Jersey before the storm hit. Our state was in crisis before the storm hit, and we all know it. We have another New Jersey that needs to be rebuilt, that has been neglected by this governor. And so when people talk to you about the poll, tell them that Senator Buono, even though she was the first woman majority leader in the state of New Jersey, the first woman to chair the Senate Budget and Appropriations Committee in New Jersey, that she doesn't have a lot of name recognition outside of her area of the state. But once she gets out there, and once we get on TV, and once we focus people on the pocketbook issues that will drive people to the polls, that gap will close, and that it's already begun to close. You should also tell them that back in 2009, you may recall when John Corzine ran for re-election. He was wildly unpopular, you may recall, 33% approval rating, and yet he only lost by a small margin. And so, you know, a lot of people stayed home, a lot of people were unhappy, and let me tell you something, unions are energized in a way that I have never seen before. Because again, you know I gave up my majority leader position because I stood up for principle, and I would do it again. But back in 2009, even though that governor had their endorsement, they stayed home or they didn't vote for him. I know, they've told me. I know the police and fire have said that I think they endorsed him. I know the PBA did. And they voted for the other guy because he promised them. He promised them that he wouldn't touch their pensions and benefits. And they all thought he was one of them. They all regret their decision because elections have consequences. So we have to remind people that they need to get energized. Do not sit back and accept just that. It's not about sitting back and being defeated. And you have to energize people. And I think we are, as much as I get out there, we are, but we're going to go up on TV, hopefully the end of May, and we're going to introduce Barbara Buono to people on a grander scale. And that's what we need to do. Thank you.
Like this though, because now the senator has 2 minutes left before she has to leave, so she'll take 2 questions. Here we go.
Something that's near and dear to my heart. I'm very involved with Rutgers. I've been meeting with the new president, President Barchi, several times. He keeps repeating to me how I think we're 47th in the country for higher education funding. And we're billions of dollars behind in funding our public institutions for higher education. Even with the voter funding that came in, that's so little.
It's minimal, it is.
It really doesn't make that big of an impact. And because of that tuition's going up, and I know it's something you touched on, as governor, what would you do to bring our higher education system?
I'm glad you asked that question. Because I'm going to be the education governor. And I can tell you that, you know, the other day the governor, and I will get to your point, I'm going to probably talk a little longer about this because it's such a big issue for me. The other day, the governor made the headlines again by saying that, you know, it's the unions, and in particular, he's talking about the teachers' union, that the unions are the problem. Except the governor's got it wrong. The unions aren't the problem. The problem is this governor's misplaced priorities. The problem is that he has underfunded our public schools, and he should have been funding them according to the School Funding Reform Act, which I authored, and he's flouting the law. The problem is this governor acts as if it's not his problem that institutions of higher learning have been underfunded and it's less money than when he first came into office. He acts as if it's not his problem, but you know what it is. And I believe in New Jersey, you're absolutely right. New Jersey has for years been underfunding our institutions of higher learning as well. And as your governor, I'm going to make sure that's a priority. We're going to have a line item in the budget for it. And I think that that will make a difference. I think we have to have a stronger commissioner of higher education. Right now we have one again, covered Governor Whitman when she came into office. That was one of the first things she did away with. We need to have an advocate that represents all of the colleges. But more than that, it's about leadership and it's about priorities, because a budget is about priorities and values. And as your governor, I will make education from K to 12 and colleges and public colleges and universities as well a high priority. We need to fund them because they are not just an economic engine, but we owe it to our children to educate them, to train them, to prepare them, because they need even more preparation in the global marketplace to be competitive.
Yeah.
Sorry I went on so long, but it's a big issue for me. And then,
we have to rebuild the shore, but I'm concerned with the Ashbright contract, the pay-to-play contract signed by the governor, where our shore communities are paying 3 times what they needed to pay. And I'd like you to comment on Ashbright, because I don't think that's the way we rebuild the shore.
but for those of you who don't know, shortly before Sandy hit, when we knew it was coming, Haley Barbour, the former Mississippi governor, who was this governor, Christie's mentor. In fact, he's been quoted as saying that if it weren't for Haley Barbour's early support of him, he wouldn't be governor. So Haley Barbour now is a lobbyist. Haley Barbour is a lobbyist for Ashbright. Haley Barbour calls up Governor Christie before the storm hits and say, hey, you know, I represent this firm, and Haley Barbour admitted it. And he said, I represent this firm, they're really good, whatever he said, but they didn't go out to bid on the contract. What they did is New Jersey, so the governor said yes. And instead of going out to bid, which we had time to do, because you can turn it around fast if you need to, he went to the state of Connecticut, who had previously bid out this contract in 2008. And it's called piggybacking. He piggybacked on it and used them to do the cleanup and to try, and there was a whole expose in the Star-Ledger. The Ashbright actually hired local lobbyists then to go to municipalities and encourage them, quote unquote, to hire Ashbright to do the cleanup. Well, now we find out 2 things. 1, Ashbright charged exorbitant fees, and number 2, and we had a legislative oversight hearing. I'm the vice chair of the Legislative Oversight Committee, and we called them in before us. We found out that FEMA it frowns upon piggybacking contracts because they're by their very nature, by definition, non-competitive. So this will then require an added level of scrutiny, and FEMA may not fully reimburse the towns for what they've already spent. So we had a hearing on it. It was extremely contentious. I don't know if any of you saw it. And the Republicans on the other side were calling foul. They were saying it's politics. And so, no, I think the people of New Jersey deserve to know how their taxpayers' money is being spent.
We don't pay to play.
Exactly. So we have 2 more hearings are supposed to be scheduled to address it. But if you have any spare time and you want to shoot the Senate President an email, you may say, you know, when are we having these hearings? Thank you.
Which she's richly deserved, but before she does, I want to call up the LD16 candidates and get a picture taken, hopefully. Ida? And let's give the Senator a round of applause while we're doing that. Yeah.
thank Senator Buono one more time. Thank you very much for coming. Let's just take a couple minutes break and then we'll continue with our program.